good afternoon. It's 5 p.m. I'm Tina Brock, the host of Into the Absurd and the producing artistic director here at the Idiopathic Ridiculopathy Consortium. And I am so very delighted that you have joined us today for a very special conversation with two guests who I will introduce you to in just a couple of minutes. But as we are getting everyone into the Zoom room and welcoming all of you who are on Facebook Live, thank you so much for being here. And we want to take your questions this afternoon for Liz Goldberg and for the Reverend G. Morgan Thomas, who are the Hatted Ladies of Harlem, and we will introduce them in just a couple of seconds throughout this next 50 minutes. We're going to be discussing how fashion and art come together, and we definitely want you to be a part of that conversation. So, Liz Goldberg. Liz was on the very first show we did here for Into the Absurd way back in June, and she's an illustrator and she teaches up at Pratt and also at Drexel University fashion illustration. And we have the Reverend G. Morgan Thomas, and she is the owner of the American Hats LLC here in Philadelphia. And together, she and Liz have formed a very beautiful partnership called the Hatted Ladies of Harlem, where fashion and art come together to sing some beautiful songs. So let me welcome and introduce Liz Goldberg and the Reverend Georgette Morgan Thomas. Welcome, Liz.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, 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 there she is.
How are you? Hi,
hello. Hi, ladies.
Yes, we are here.
Yeah, so Reverend Morgan Thomas, you're at are you at the factory at American Hats?
No, actually, I'm at my son's home in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Oh, wow. Okay, I half expected to see a lot of hats and heads and places
we have
around
hats
you.
everywhere. So here in his office is a hat tree, also full of hats, because we, we have hats everywhere in our home. So.
Yeah. Well, they are a lovely
thank you.
Tribute to art and to the story that you both have created, which I want to get to promptly. But I think what I'll do is let me start with Liz. And Liz, just to reintroduce our audience to you, many who may be meeting you for the first time. Liz Goldberg teaches at Pratt, right? Fashion illustration, and also at Drexel University. And tell me where you are coming to us from today, Liz.
Well, I'm coming to you from my studio. I have some of the Hatted Ladies right behind me. The Cuban Queens are in the balcony. So I am in my studio in Philadelphia with everybody here.
Okay, all the girls are here.
All the girls.
All right. So over your right shoulder, is
Betsy Regina.
Okay.
Andy, and then there's Harriet over here, and there's about 11 of them. These were the front runners, so they got the front seats. But there are about 11 altogether. All have names. There's Gloria, there's the milliner, and we just have plenty of them, plenty of names to go around. And they're really based on real people that I worked with to do these hats. So they are real people. Some of the names have been changed just to
protect the models.
Protect the models.
Right.
But for the most part, they're all my figures, all my characters are always based on reality to start with. So these were women I had met for many years, and I was doing them with their church hats and with their regular ostentatious hats. And so they came together as the Hatted Ladies of Harlem. So this is the beginning. So yeah,
the beginning and the product of that.
Yeah.
So Reverend Morgan Thomas, let's start. I want to get to the story of you purchasing it's S&S. Is it S&S?
It was S&S Hat Factory.
Mm-hmm. Up on Fraley Street, right?
Fraley Street in Northeast Philadelphia.
And the story was, I read, but I want to hear you talk about it, is that you are, you're heading into retirement and now you're working, working
7 days a week.
Yeah.
Some retirement.
So you found out through a friend that this hat factory was being sold, and
yes.
I want to know what it was about this that made you jump on this and want to do it in retirement.
Well, I had been purchasing hats from S&S indirectly. I had one of the designers at S&S was a good friend of mine and my milliner. And so whenever I needed a hat, she would come up with it. I'd tell her what color, and she would have it made at the S&S hat factory. And so she informed me one day that the factory was being sold at auction. And at that time, my son was in law school. And so I said to her, I really can't get involved in this right now. I want to make sure that I keep my money available should my son not get all of the financing that he had gotten his first year. He was actually in his second year of law school. And so I said, I really can't get involved right now. And so I did not, went on about life. And then I was planning retirement like that next year. And so one Sunday afternoon after church, she came to me a year later, and she said, "Oh my goodness, the hat factory was sold, you know, to the gentleman, and he just feels like he doesn't want to keep it, and he's going to walk away from it." And I said, without even batting an eye, I said, "I'll buy it." And then I was like, "I'll buy it." You know, I didn't. So I said, well, let me sit down and talk with them, and then I'll look, you know, I think I want to buy it. At this point, my son had graduated a few months before from law school, and I was looking to retire in the spring. This was somewhere around June of 2016. And sure enough, the gentleman wanted to sell it. I bought it. And in 2016, I began to actually work in the factory in production.
Wow. And do you still live up in Harlem?
I still live in Harlem.
And you have a showroom in Harlem?
Pardon me?
Do you have your showroom still in Harlem?
Row. Historical Strivers Row is our showroom. So we still show and sell hats in Harlem. And then we had a showroom in our factory. And we actually opened a retail store in Center City in the new Fashion District Mall.
And so you're coming down pre-COVID, right? You were coming down, and Liz was telling me before the show, before you got on today, you were still coming down, right, to work in the factory and to oversee things.
That's right. I take the Amtrak train and I come in. I take a 1 hour and 22-minute commute on every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. I commute into Philadelphia.
So you loved hats, but you had no experience as a milliner
at all.
So what was it that spoke to you that made you know this was the thing you had to do?
Well, one of the things that had been bothering me for years was that we were no longer making things in the United States. You know, we used to make our clothing, our shoes. In all of our communities, there were shoemakers, dressmakers, hat makers. And so that was a real issue for me. And I was always complaining about it with friends of mine. And also, I knew the people by names. I really didn't know the people who worked at the factory, but I knew their names. I'd heard stories that my friend would tell me about the going-ons of the factory. So I felt like I knew those individuals. And I also felt like, hey, this is manufacturing. Here we go. Another piece of manufacturing in this country being lost. So you know what? I should put my money where my mouth is. And I'm an avid hat wearer. I've been wearing hats all my life. I'm going to do this. I'm gonna get into hat manufacturing. And that was it. And I felt I could save the jobs of the men and women who worked in the factory as well.
I want to ask you more questions about working in the hat factory, because that sounds like an ideal job to me.
Actually, heaven for a hat lover.
Yeah.
As Liz knows, because Liz stops in the store and gets so rejuvenated and inspired. And when she comes to the factory, oh my goodness, it's just
the factory is like a candy store. I mean, you walk in, and as a colorist, as everybody can see behind me, I think it was like the first day we met, you and I read the article, I came down and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, it was,
So Liz, you read the article in the Inquirer?
yes,
Is that the one
yeah, I
that we'll
saw it.
post in the chat
And I
box for
said,
everybody?
I've got to meet this woman. Like my intuition, like we were talking, my intuition is just 100%. And I said, I have to meet her. So I would show up every Sunday, like
Right.
clockwork. And then I started drawing her. I said, put the hat on. How are you? And a couple of times, I think I even sold a couple of hats, right? You know, I said, would you look
Were you
forward-"
stalking her?
No, not really. I just was
No,
so
we were socializing. We were just two girls and
In a hat shop.
on a Sunday afternoon chatting about wonderful things. And then customers would come in and Liz would just talk to them before you know it, she's convinced them to buy the hat. So we were having a great time.
Yeah, it was more of a socializing. And I think one thing led to another. We found that we were on the same thinking track. You know, we were,
Yes.
there's something that clicks at one point, like when we were talking, you know, about collaboration. And I had already been painting. I've been painting women in hats for years. I come from a hat making family too. So
Right.
my great grandmother was a hat maker. So there was it was in both our DNAs, I guess, to just come together. And then suddenly I think the idea just sparked, didn't it? We just, I don't know, we came up with, and I'm a collaborator, you know, from way back. And it just
We would be finishing each other's sentences when we'd be talking about possibilities of things that you could do with Liz's art and our hats. And we would come up with these ideas and look at each other and say, yeah, that's what I was just thinking. And so we realized that we had to start to be formally thinking about some events to do, because we were always kicking around these great elaborate ideas.
Yeah. And
Liz is good that way. She's a good
I'm an
he
idea
and I
person.
kick around a lot of elaborate ideas as well. It's great fun.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the one thing about collaboration, the two people have to be almost on opposite sides. One has to be like, you can't be in the same exact, like if she were another illustrator, it probably wouldn't work. But when you're working with someone that's more sculptural and I'm drawing, it's like you're working and putting two pieces together. And I think that was, you know, it was two ends of the spectrum that we could work on and pull this amazing like theater piece together, you know, of putting the 3D hat to the 2D surface, as I call it.
Right.
So tell us about the event that you designed and the plan for it and what happened.
Well, I guess we were ready to shoot. We were having a fashion show. We were in rehearsal that day. I think it was right before COVID, and we were supposed to do the rehearsal in the Cube in the Fashion District.
So back up just a little bit, Liz. The event came together, and it was a fashion show with art attached to it, correct?
What we were planning
a hat show.
A hat show.
We were actually going to do a hat show, interwoven with an art show, so that we would have Liz's fabulous, beautiful, color popping portraits matched up with our colorful hats. And then our idea was to have the models walk the runway wearing big, fabulous, beautiful hats, and then carrying Liz's portraits. And it just, we were like, oh, this is awesome. And so COVID came and we were kind of put on hold. We're still going to do it
until last week, and we actually did we actually did it in the factory, which I think was more exciting. We got 6 models together, and they carry the painting, so they're they become part of the artwork, and they're all dressed in black, and then the hats are matching the paintings. So so it really, it was a simple idea, but it worked. And we did try it out last week. We videographed, you know, for live streaming. And I have done, you know, more paintings as well. Like we have a series we call it the Gigi series that I did 25 of Reverend Thomas in every hat conceivable that's there. Yeah, so this was just I don't know, it just worked. You know, it was a very simple procedure, and it was very colorful to put together. So we did.
And then the diversity,
The
you
diversity,
know, you have
yes.
the diversity of two women from very different backgrounds, very different professions. But the key is that even though many people don't see hats as art, I do. And so that was the thing that brought Liz and I so close together, because when I would talk about hats, Liz would say, "Oh my God, you talk about them like they are art forms," which she saw them as art forms. And I was
Yeah,
say to her, exactly, I feel the same way. Each hat it's like a sculpture. It's like a work of art. And so, and then when you put them all together in our store, she would walk in and say, "Oh my God, Reverend Thomas, this is fabulous." And then we would just sit amongst the hats on a Sunday afternoon and sip coffee and talk about all the great possibilities.
yeah, so it was just a back and forth. And I think I would be going around trying on hats as well.
Yes.
I mean, they were the colors. I mean, you have to understand, Tina, that the colors are beyond what you normally think of as a church hat. You know, I had always gone, even going to the church to watch women, you know, how they put them together. But these were beyond that. They were art forms because of the color, the shapes. Like, remember the new ones you just made?
Yes,
There,
absolutely.
and then we put them on the models. We actually handpicked our models, which was another diverse group. And they became sculptural. So the whole thing was like a piece of sculpture walking down the runway that became, in a way, dance to me. You know, I'm always with Latin dance, but it was that movement and the rhythm that I think I was so attracted to, that we were actually like dance partners for this. And
and then the diversity in pulling together Liz's artwork, her portraits with the models holding them, and the models being so diverse in age and shape, you know, and gender. It was just wonderful. We have one model who is, you know, is a guy, but he's not trans. He's I think he dresses, he cross dresses, and so he has yellow hair. And then he had on a shocking electric blue flat top, wide brim wool felt hat. So, and then the portrait that he was holding was of one of Liz's Cuban queens who had on a similar blue hat. And so it was just fabulously pulled together, the diversity of individuals, the diversity of the collaborators, and then the diversity of the art form itself.
Yeah. And we even went as far as you were talking to people that they should have their portrait done.
Yes.
For posterity. Bye, Liz. Yeah, we were thinking economically as well, but it is something that to have your portrait done with a hat on, like you know, the people I was using from Harlem and people I had met before, it really kind of just makes them, I guess, forever. You know, it's like
Immortalizes.
immortalizes them.
The hat and the person.
The hat and the person at that age. I remember, and I think it's a memory that sparked it from the beginning. My aunt was a magnificent dresser, a lot of fashionistas in my family, but there was a portrait done of her. And I remember sitting in front of that portrait. It just like transported me. And I think it was something that maybe sparked when I met Reverend Thomas, that of this painting that never left my mind. I can still see it, you know, and I think I'm going to be doing one of you too in that white outfit.
Liz is actually going to do a portrait for me for my ordination, wearing the hat and the outfit that I was ordained in. And I think that it's very important for me, because I'm like a real history kind of person. And I imagine having that hanging in my granddaughter's house and her pointing to it saying, well, yes, that's my grandmother. She's the one that created American hats. She founded it. And so now that's what hopefully she will be doing. She will be the CEO of American Hats. and have a portrait actually of her Gigi.
Yeah. Yeah, and we talk about shows. We actually had, Irving Thomas, we had about 3 shows planned, and there was even one
Yes.
meeting with the Cuban Queens at the Ace Hotel in New York, where all the hatted women were going to show up for the opening to the Cuban Queens. And we had maybe 3 hatted ladies shows planned, one in Harlem. We actually may be having one here in Liquid. They're going to be doing the Cuban Queens, but they've reached out to me that they're very interested in this. But you know, we had things planned. We've got our goals set. You know, we always talk about our goal in 2022 now. And yeah, we keep our eye on the Met Museum.
We're seeking to get to the museum.
They do have a hat section in there, but it's just a matter of working with her. I mean, there's something that's just so exciting.
Magical.
When we're in the same room, and that's what a collaboration is. That you're working, I think, to the common purpose. And I've been in many, you know, with the Cuban Queens, with Warren, and there's years that you work together, and I think it just grows. There's something about the you know, I'm always carrying my sketch pad, and she's always got a new hat on whenever I come in. It's always something new. And the Hat Factory, I don't know, it's out of this world. It's like you don't expect it where it is.
Right. And perfect example is like this hat I have on. When I first bought the Hat Factory, I said, because I'm a hat wearer, fedoras were very popular with the millennials. That was one of the reasons I felt comfortable taking the risk to buy the factory, because I felt like hats were on the upswing. And I said, but you know something, I have to have a hat that sets apart from the traditional fedora. And so I came up with this. And as you can see, the crown of this hat is very different. It was actually made from a die-cast stamper, which is a hydraulic form that we don't use in the factory any longer. And then the trim on it are hand-folded rosettes. So it's an exquisite piece of art.
Yeah, and
that became my signature fedora. And initially when I wore it, no one else had one like it. Since I created it 2 years ago, we have every year put a similar shape into our fall collection, just with a different trim. But again, it's artistic. It's a piece of art.
Oh, it's beautifully sculptural.
And you know what? There's rhythm to the hat. When I do the portrait of my, you know, my women, and they're not traditional. I paint both traditional and non-traditional, depending on the client. But there's something about the rhythm of the hats that she makes. They're not standard. So there's a rhythm to the line that excites me when I'm actually putting it on the person that's posing for it. So it's a different, I think with the sculpture, it does lend itself to my way of looking at things, that if they have a rhythm, they're in.
There's a music.
And Liz, I think you're so right, because when people walk into the Hat Factory, we had a gentleman come in on Wednesday, and he was just like, oh my goodness, oh my. And then it was like his whole persona changed.
Yeah.
And as you said, it was like he could hear the music.
Yeah.
And so he changed the way he was moving. It was like he was a little more fluid in his movement. He appeared to be calmer. It was just a beautiful transition and sort of a transformation as he looked at all the different hats. So I think Liz is absolutely right. There's a music that goes with the hats, and it takes you trying them on. That's one of the reasons that online is a good medium, but there's nothing like trying on a hat, because then that hat, it sings to you. It has that melody that you hear that says, this is yours. I belong to you.
I,
I should go home with you.
yes, but we did that.
You know, I think of the Fair Lady, Liz. Remember we were talking about that? I
Yeah.
feel pretty.
Yeah.
Oh, so pretty.
Yeah, and I think when we had the fashion show, you know, the rehearsal last week, and we shot it with the videographer. The minute I put that orange hat on that literally didn't fit me, and you let me wear it. She stuffed newspaper up into the top, so it would sit on my head and not like down to here. But I put that hat on, and I was like another character.
Mhm.
You become somebody else, but you do hear rhythm. You hear like you want to dance, you want to move, you want to flow. I think it's a funny magical, you know, thing that happens with these hats. You
So
know?
what do you think that is, Reverend Thomas? Like, elaborating on what you're both connecting on there about it transforms the person in a way. Is it the act of adding to your person, or?
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. You know, there was a book called Crowns, and then there was a production called Crowns, in which we actually made the hats for the 15th anniversary when Regina Taylor brought it back to Princeton University again. And it really is the fact that when you add the accessory of hat to your head, it tends to make you shore up. You stand up a little straighter. It's like you all of a sudden you are conscious that there is something on your head, and you have to carry it. And so
playful. You become playful.
yes,
you know, like dress up. It's like when you were little, and you dressed up with the high heel, your mother's high heels, the hat, and the lipstick. I think you're allowed to play. You're allowed to, and you know, artists play all the time. We have to be able to go into a certain world in order to create that has nothing to do with the real world, and then come out again. But we do go in there of the inspiration, like, you know, Wendy over there with the pink hat on the blue feathers. You know, it's you know, she didn't exactly look like that as reality, but she becomes that. And I think when I do the portraits, I kind of add that element to the portrait, that they become greater than they are. And I think there's something in that. Plus that, when I say playfulness, I mean, I don't know, it's like you let yourself become the child within, which is so important, you know, to in this world.
Well, maybe it literally is going back to when we were kids and we would put our mother's
hats on,
shoes on and hats on, and there's a part of the DNA that's still there.
Still there. It's real, because I remember like my grandfather was a blacksmith, and I took blacksmithing in college. And I walked in and they were all men and they were all blacksmiths. And he had to give me his child's hammer because I was so tiny. But I went in and I smelled the air, and I remembered the smell from when I was a child. And it was like I was home. And that's the same thing with hats. When I would go, and my mother, when she had passed away, she had hats in closets I didn't know about. And I was packing them up and taking them. And the funny thing is, though, when I was 9, I refused to wear a hat. My mother was mortified. So I did grow out of that. I wouldn't wear a hat. I said, I'm not wearing any hats. But eventually, you know, you come back to that. And there's that element, I think, with the hat, that it is in your DNA. I think these things are in your DNA. I'm sure of it, that they come get you if you don't go get them.
They will find you.
If
I were to come to the factory with Liz on some Sunday, Reverend, what might I find you doing in there, or what would I see?
What you would see us actually preparing what we call hoods for blocking, because all of our hats are hand blocked. So you might see us getting together the hoods with the production tickets that go over in the blocking area. We might actually be placing new hats that have just been finished on trees. We keep our hats on trees and we color coordinate them. Or I might be in the retail area putting in new hats there, or taking out hats, or filling in spaces, coordinating ribbons. We have oh my God, we have hundreds and hundreds of rolls of different kinds of ribbon. And so we might be pulling and looking at ribbons to do trim. There may be some trim already done that we're trying to decide which hat to put it on. So it's just a real exciting, colorful, inspiring place to be. And that's what I always feel like I'm a kid in the store playing, you know, it's just wonderful. I was telling someone, even now during COVID, I don't have that, I guess, that distress like many businesses have, though that we are struggling as well. But it is so inspiring and so beautiful that when I go, those things don't really play the prime role in my day and my time. When I bought the factory and our main customers took their business to China, as most people were doing, and deserted manufacturing in the USA, I still, even though I had to recreate, you know, how we were doing business, but I was still having fun. Every day when I opened the door and went in, it was like, well, I'm home.
And you know, it's also, the factory is in a location in a building that you don't expect what's going to happen when you walk. It's a brick building, one of the old brick, which I love. And the first time you go in this little door, you just literally go in a little door, and then, you know, you look around. I always feel like Dr. Seuss is in the house with us too.
Isn't it next to auto repair? Is it in?
It's in a funny location. It's in an interesting location.
Yes, we're next door to, there's a big dock that we also use to receive, you know, merchandise and supplies. But that dock is the home of a food distribution center. And so, and then right around the corner and next door to us is another uniform making hat business. They make the hats for firemen and policemen. And then there's a welding school, which is immediately adjacent to our wing of the building. The building is sort of H-shaped, and each of us has a wing in the building. So it's really, you would never expect what will happen to you when you open the door of American Hats.
And the showroom, you have
everybody that steps through that door goes, oh, wow, oh my goodness.
You want to look at this. You want to just paint like right there. But I've done you a million times that you have your paint.
Yes, you have, Liz.
In the factory now.
It sounds like just so incredibly wonderfully theatrical just every day of the week. Like it's a stage, and you're making like a set shop, you know, you're making these wonderful, and I know, you know, Erica Holscher, who is behind the scenes today guiding this flight along with Bob Schmidt. Erica does a lot of the work, you know, for us for she does all the work, the costuming work for us for IRC shows, and hats always figure in so beautifully. And, you know, there have been shows where Erica will say, just wait till he gets that, you know, wait till he gets the hat on, or she gets the hat on. And then that character is going to really come alive. It's so magical.
Yeah. Yeah.
The way that,
and that theatrical aspect that you said, Teen, that's what's there. It's not just a hat shop. There are hat shops all over the place, but this one has, you know, it's a company.
He's agreeing, it's magical, right?
You know what, Reverend Thomas, we didn't talk about the hat pins. I'm a hat pin collector. I love hat pins. You know, when I went to Columbia, the one thing everybody told me is you carry a hat pin, somebody gets too close, you just jam with the hat pin. I mean, those were the bad days, you know, the days of ill repute at Columbia. But, you know, if the neighborhoods were not that safe. So when you traveled on the one train, you carried your hat pin with you. So I had a very elaborate hat pin that was accompanied me.
It was your weapon?
It was, you know, I mean, when I needed, I wasn't using it that much, but hat pins you sell a lot of that. They're very beautiful, you know, extraordinary hat pins too that go in the hat, which I think is part of the charm, you know, it's part of the hats. But
my mother left a hole. There's like a ceramic tree that has little holes in it, and the long pins are in with the little ceramic balls. It's one of my favorite favorite possessions. I think that's what's so special about it is the, well, you talked about it initially, how you came together, the sort of, I'll use the word religion of it, because you both had a devotion to,
Yeah.
to the history of it, to the art of it.
And I think that Reverend Thomas brings the historical part to it. I bring the portraiture part to it. And then together the color mixes, you know, all the colors. And the history is so important, I think, to an art series. Like if you're going to show, you have to have more than just the fun of it. You have to have the history of it.
Absolutely.
The women, and I'm very serious about portraiture. So I when they do wear the hat, and I studied so many women with the church hats as a child and growing up, that I think that makes it solidified. Is, well, you were talking about the historical end of it.
Absolutely.
It's something that I think just like I guess seams it all together. So because it's a very serious thing, you know.
Right. Well, we look at the suffragette movement,
Yeah.
you know, and when women were fighting so hard for the right to vote, and all of the photos that we see, the women are always adorned in hats.
Yeah.
And that was a very important part of a woman's attire. Same with the civil rights movement. Any women that you saw in the civil rights movement would have on their hats. And so I often say, you know, hats empower women, because the women, you know, there was something about covering their heads, which is also in both the Torah and in the Bible about women in worship covering their heads as well. So there was something about covering the head that empowered women and made them feel like they could go forth and they could accomplish anything. You know, I always had this, mantra in my life. I would say, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Well, part of that comes from, again, during worship, covering of the head. And, you know, I always have on a hat. And then that power that you receive within yourself. And we saw it in the suffragette movement, because women stood up and they made some bold statements and stepped out in a way that women never, ever had even imagined doing before. And it took them a long time, but they stayed the course and fought the good fight, as did the women, you know, along with men in the civil rights movement.
Yeah. And one little thing that I add to that, you know, with teaching fashion illustration, when we come to hats, the kids get scared because I start lecturing. You have to make sure the hat fits that top of the head, you know, because they draw it like this and then it sits on the top. But they you know, they say, oh my God, hats is coming. We're going to have to make sure that hat is fitting the head. You know, it's because, you know, you're so, it's the thing of the head going in there.
Right.
There's something about, you know, when you put a thinking cap on or you're putting on,
absolutely,
you know, but it is a much more exciting top to the head. You know, it's this new colorful infusion
absolutely.
of just, you know, the seriousness and the fun, I think, coming together. But
the sassiness, seductiveness. We think about Casablanca, the fabulous hats in Casablanca, many of the other you know, old movies where women wore beautiful hats all pulled down. You know, oftentimes they had the hat down over their eyes, you know, you barely could see them. So, you know, it was really seductive and mysterious. So the hat, you know, also can define one's mood or reflect one's mood. So it's just an amazing accessory.
Yeah.
And it's been very low key. It's not received the song that it should have. It's been unsung for many, many years.
Yeah. So I guess the timing of it, you know.
Yeah.
Do you, Reverend Morgan Thomas, when you go out, do you always have a hat on?
Always.
Yes.
Oh, I'll take that back. When I have a little time, in the Harlem community, and I need to like say run to the store and run right back, because typically it takes me half an hour to walk just 2 blocks to the coffee shop, because I have to stop and talk to people. So if I don't want to talk to people, I just take my hat off and I walk right by them and they don't realize it's me. I always speak. I'll say, "Oh, good morning, Ida," but I'll keep walking really quickly.
So hat
by
on.
the time they know it's me, I'm gone. Yeah.
That's so funny. Hat on, you're free to talk.
Yeah.
Hat off, they
so
wouldn't
people,
recognize you.
right. Without my hat on, many times people don't realize it's me.
That's
Because
so
they look for
fascinating.
the hat. For me, the hat has become a part of who I am.
Do you feel incomplete without it?
I do. I feel undressed without my hat on. Yeah.
And how about you, Liz? Is
Oh,
a hat?
yeah, I love my hats. I mean, I have a very large hat collection. And even when I was traveling, I found a hat maker up in the hills somewhere. Had to buy the hat, and I had to wear it on the plane because I wasn't allowed to put it in my suitcase because it would have crushed it.
Right.
And it was, people were, it was like, "Oh my God, why is she wearing this fancy hat?" Coming home from the islands. I mean, it was a little bit of a, like a very funny experience. I actually had bought 2 hats, so I had to put one hat under the other hat. But no, I have a very, we won't go into that story. That was a long story going to customs.
That's not happening in the runway show, is it?
No, but we
Okay,
could add that on the next runway show. But
We have nice sturdy hat boxes.
no, we didn't have a hat
Oh.
box for that one, but I do have an extensive hat. I didn't wear it today, but I have my hat. My hat from American Hats, and I'm still coveting that orange hat. And I do have I have a pretty big hat collection myself, and the ones that my mother had left hidden away, and my aunt, her sister. I couldn't believe when they opened their closets because they all had sons. I was like one of the only girls in the family, and I remember staying at my aunt's home for a weekend. For some reason, she said, "Well, you're old enough now to see the closet." God, what's the closet? It's a little house in Forest Hills. And she opened the closet and I couldn't believe what was going on in there. I mean, there were hats, there were outfits, there were gloves. My mother left me her glove collection, her extensive glove collection, that I wear to my shows now all the time. I just pick a glove. But yeah, no, I do sport a hat quite often. Even for running, I have my special hats that I love, by certain makers too. But for dress up, I like to wear the hats from American Hats now. So yeah.
Are you designing, Reverend? Are you designing as well, or do you have?
I'm really not a designer, so I try to be very, very careful not to, put that out that I design hats. However, because I'm such an avid hat wearer, I, ask the question, what if we took this brim and put this on it? And then my staff will do that. And then we'll, look at it and say, "Oh, wow, that's really nice. That's really pretty." And then we end up making a new hat. So I guess I do some designing, but I have no training as a milliner and no training as a hat designer. My training was in psychology. I worked for many, many, many years as a psychiatric social worker in outpatient mental health. That's actually where I retired from. And then I went into developing housing for the mentally disabled. But my love of hats and my eye for what looks good has allowed me to assist my staff in making some beautiful hats. We've made some really phenomenal hats lately. We have a whole line of Chanel hats that, oh my goodness, they're so wonderful. And the reason we're making them is because I always loved Chanel, and you can't find it. Nobody bothers to make hats out of Chanel anymore. So I said, oh, we're gonna make these cloches. They are beautiful, little upturned hats. They're also beautiful, ready for the fall.
And I find that what I do is I go around and redesign her hats. I go around and I said, well, if I put that top on that, so I'm kind of design, that somewhere we come together, and there may be a hat that you go, oh my gosh, and then she can make the hat. And then there is that new line you had, I found. You remember the ones I said, where did these
Yeah,
come
Liz
from?
was talking about seeing these hats in Brooklyn, and I was like, Liz, I was thinking about that.
Hats.
And then I made this hat, this gigantic crown, and Liz walked into the store. She was like, "Oh my God, you made it!"
It's a hat.
So describe this one. You saw this.
It's a Hasidic hat that there's a group of Hasidim that in Williamsburg, right near Pratt. It's a special hat, and it sits way up on the top of the head, so it's up. And then it comes down, and it's a certain shape. And I actually said to a colleague when I first saw it, I said, I would love that in hot pink. And I probably would have been in trouble if I'd said it too loud in the neighborhood. But the hat, and then she had a hat. I said, yeah, I can make you that, because you have some hats for the Hasidim. They don't know what they have with some of the designs for the hats.
Yeah,
that they're wearing down the street. And when you see 12 of them together, or if you go to B&H to buy audio, like equipment for filming on a Sunday morning, they come out of the subway, hundreds of them, because everything's open on a Sunday. And all these hats are like coming out of the subway. So to me, it's, I don't know, I stand there, I'm like intrigued, that there are so many, but that one hat, and then she had the hat. And I said, well, in hot pink, I'll take it. So this is.
I have to make it in hot pink now for Liz.
No, now it's written in stone. It's on Tina's show. So
this is on tap, right? It's on record.
It's on record that we need.
So we have a couple of questions. I just want to make sure that we get to in the short bit of time that we have left. How long have you been a reverend, and do you have a church?
I'm a retired pastor of Mustard Seed Faith Ministries, but I think there's still some, once you put things on the internet, we used to have a real big internet presence. We did a lot of community work. I worked in Harlem. We literally took back a neighborhood and planted trees with the help of Bette Midler, which is now one of the most beautiful neighborhoods in Harlem. It's Edgecombe Avenue between 145th and 141st Street in Central Harlem. And Mustard Seed Faith Ministries also ran a program where we sent kids to camp every summer, sleepover camp, because many inner city kids didn't know about going away to sleepover camp. And we did, food giveaways, and we would do a Christmas party every year in which we would close the street and turn the lights on our Christmas tree. One of the things that we did with the Bette Midler project was we planted a Christmas tree that is now about 20 feet tall. I used to be able to put the star on the top. Now we need a cherry picker to do that. And so I was ordained on May 2nd in 2004.
All right, I just want to make sure I get to some of the questions here. And we're going to put in the chat box over here links to to Liz, your website, Liz Goldberg, whom you'll get to see, investigate so much great stuff there, and to the many different avenues we can find you. Reverend Morgan Thomas. What I did tune into was at 1 o'clock on Saturdays, right? Every week you have your 1 o'clock Facebook Live show, right? So I tuned in today, but then found out that you had taped it last night because special occasion today. But I love the concept of you auctioning the hats, and what a fun time. So can we find you there Saturdays at 1?
Yes, next Saturday at 1 o'clock, I will be live and in person on Hats and Chats again. And we have about 30 members, sort of. Well, there's no membership, but we have about 30 participants and who attend every Saturday. And then we go up to sometimes 69 people who are viewing. But they attend every Saturday, look forward to it, and they are just adding to their hat collection, which, you know, really sort of pushes me. I have this feeling of, okay, we have to, you know, have these hats auctioned so they can all afford to have a new hat. So, and
so it's
it's
an auction, right?
It's an auction.
It's a true auction, and I think last week, because
Yes.
the fashion runway show ended right at 1 o'clock, she pulled us all in. I mean, we were so
Yes.
excited to be live on the hat auction with you. So it's a wonderful show, yeah. And Tina, I'm gonna have to take you out to the hat factory.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah, I
love
mean,
to
we'll have
visit
to
the
go
hat
up.
factory.
Yeah,
Yes.
you know,
Since
And
I'll
it's
have to
called
draw
Hats
you
and
a hat.
Chat. And so a part of the time is a chat, and where I talk about materials that hats are made of. Like I explained to everyone about the Panama straw, that it really isn't, it's not Panama straw. The hat originated in Ecuador, but the people working on the Panama Canal bought those hats from the South Americans, brought them back to the US, and then we, of course, claimed it as a Panama straw. And things like that. I talk about trim. We talked about how veils became popular with our in the 1930s, and we talk about how the hat changes from the different eras during the war. So it's a chat, and then it's also an auction.
and a history lesson, it sounds
Yeah,
like, too. That's
absolutely.
so
Yeah,
much fun about it, is that you're getting all of that wonderful
Right.
history that brings us to the table. Now, before we wrap up, I wish we could continue talking, but I want to know about, you are going to do the show that you had planned. I know that you taped it last week, but there are plans underway
Yes.
for the
full
show to
show.
happen.
Yes,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
we're kind of,
We're going to do another run through at the factory, right, Liz? And then we're still going to, we will probably, because, you know, they keep talking about COVID extending. So we have sort of decided that we should just go ahead and do our main thrust at the factory. And so we're looking at that now. So, and we have control there. So we will certainly, you'll be hearing back from us that we're
I
ready.
think we're going for 2022. And
Yes.
Liz already talked, and then we have a gallery in Harlem that has been very interested. So we are going. I mean, once I get it into my head, we're going. We're on our way. I like to break down doors.
This sounds like the best theatrical event one could possibly imagine.
Quite an
It'll be so
opening.
fun.
Yeah.
There is a question in the chat too. Will today's recording be available? We will post our conversation today on the IRC's Facebook page later on in a little bit after tonight, so you'll be able to find it there. And I definitely want to stay up and be promoting the work that you're all doing, this wonderful collaboration, which I love the seeds of this. It's so, as you say, Liz, there's certain things that kind of spark a wonderful collaboration, and it seems as though you ladies have really hit on something very magical and very special. So it's been my pleasure to talk to both of you and to meet you, Reverend, and I look forward to seeing more great projects from you.
I'm looking forward to you coming to visit us at the factory.
I cannot.
Thank you so much for having us on. I'm honored to be here.
I'm honored to know you and to know about the work you're doing in the community. It's very special, and I look forward to seeing where the show at the factory goes.
And always working with you, Tina. And Reverend Thomas, always. So
keep going, ladies. Keep going. Hats off.
Tina. Have a great evening and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
You too.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.
And thanks to everybody for being here this evening for this wonderful conversation. I hope you'll join us next Saturday, same time, 5 p.m. when Peter Andrew Danzig will be here. Peter is, he is a therapist. He's doing a lot of work in the artistic community with trauma. He is a creativity and a life coach, and has just some very special ways that he's looking into the ways in which creative people work through the various and sundry challenges that they have in their world. And some of his work has been featured in the Wall Street Journal and Philadelphia Gay News. And I'm very, very excited to have 50 minutes to sit down and talk with him next week. So tune in for a conversation with Peter Andrew Danzig next Saturday at 5 p.m. here on Into the Absurd. And we're going to be talking to you about our special Halloween party that we're having on October the 31st. John Zach will be here, and we're going to be welcoming all kinds of fun folks from IRC stages that you've known and enjoyed on shows on the stage in the past. And that's coming up. So set your calendars for October the 31st. And in the meantime, thanks so much for being here. And everybody here at the IRC wishes you the safest and the strongest of weeks ahead.